One. All right, welcome to the Inside Cafe. Today, I'm super excited because we have Cathy Casey. And Cathy Casey, to me, is a renowned mentor and teacher of the Three Principles community. She has pioneered this understanding into the California prison correctional facility, and she has amazing stories. That's what actually your stories inspired me and this podcast, because I feel there's so many wonderful stories that more people need to hear. And today I invited you on to explore our true nature. So welcome to the show, Cathy.
Fabulous to be here. I can't believe I'm in Thailand right now.
Right. I think that's a testament to just the impact of stories and presence, and how because I met you through Michael Neal's Super Coach Academy, right. And now you're on this podcast in Thailand. So people in this part of the world listening. Yeah.
Well, if somebody would have ever told me when I started learning this back in 1995, if you can imagine that, that I would be talking to folks all over the world, Jerusalem, Thailand, the UK, Europe. I mean, it's just been an amazing experience. So I'm honored to be here. Absolutely honored. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So I invited you on because I wanted to explore our true nature, but more than that, I wanted to explore just where to find it. Because I think when people ask that questions, like two things seem to come up, like what is it and where do I find it? Yeah. And I think our habitual way of looking for it is outside of ourselves. Yeah. And I think through our work, it's actually within. And loves you to point us in the direction of like, what is the nature of our true nature?
Well, that's the big mystery. I'm going to tell you, I do not have an answer to that, right. But I can speak to, I love what you just said. People are looking outside of themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people are looking for a sense of meaning, a sense of their well-being. And I know for 45 years, I was working on myself, wanting to be a better person, wanting to be of service to the world. I mean, I started doing that when I was young. I was a teenager, and I worked with kids in communities, helping kids who had no opportunities. And that just launched me into what I would call being of service to people. But so I was doing that and loving it, but I never felt, how do I want to say this? Just at ease. I never felt at peace within myself. And it's almost like I would just lose myself in my work and get very attached to that. And I became a social advocate and all of that good stuff. And I did some good work. But looking back, I never quite I didn't feel settled. And when I was going through college, I started reading into Eastern religions. I was raised in Catholicism and pretty much walked away from that. Then I thought, well, let me look into Eastern religions, and those things were making sense to me, but it was more intellectual. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So even though I was exposing myself to all of these Eastern religions or philosophies or whatever, I was still not happy within myself. It was very contingent. It was dependent on, oh, am I eating my favorite food, or am I going to go to Hawaii? Or it was always like looking probably ahead, constantly looking ahead. That was the biggie. Looking ahead.
That was,
when this happens, oh, it's going to be great. And then it's like little kids, when I remember growing up, and all of a sudden you start thinking about Christmas, and every day you can't wait till Christmas comes. You can't wait till Christmas comes. And then Christmas finally happens, and you open up all your presents, and it's for a few hours, you're having a great time. And then the day after, like, okay, what's next? What are we waiting for next? Or the idea of working on myself, going to therapy. I did all the new age stuff, all that stuff. And I reached a point, I think how old was I? I was about 44 years old. and I was getting my degree in clinical psychology. And I looked around, I thought, this is not it. That working with folks, wanting to be of service to them, but the whole focus was on what was wrong with people. And it was very intense, I mean, going through that whole experience, I kept wanting to quit. Like, this is not it. My dear friend Linda Raymond, she kept saying, just get the degree, get through, just get the stupid piece of paper. And then I thought, then I'll go to chef school and that will make people happy. So believe me, I had been on a search for 45 years.
Wow.
And I finally said to myself, you know, this is as good as it's going to get. I'm done. I actually made an announcement to myself. Purposeful announcement. I'm done with all of this searching and doing all these different things. I'm just going to be me and I'll just do the best I can. But this is as good as it's going to get in my life. And I wasn't miserable. You know, I wasn't like having I was successful in my job and I had lots of friends and everything was working out for me. But I thought, it was kind of like, I'm just going to settle for where I'm at right now. And it was a moment. And then about a few months later, by accident, I got exposed to these principles. Wasn't looking for it, was doing it just to get a job from the person who was sponsoring the program. I wanted to get a paid internship to get my degree, et cetera, et cetera. So I was not looking for anything. And I'm so glad I wasn't, because it found me, so to speak. Meaning, the thing I was looking for, it was inside me the whole time.
Right.
And so the joke was on me when I first heard Joe Bailey, when he started talking about these principles, and it took me a while to settle into even listening to him. And when it hit me, I'm like, so all this stuff I've been doing all my life, I've been chasing my tail, and I had it the whole time. So that's when I got reconnected to myself, so to speak. Meaning, instead of looking outside of myself for my well-being, somebody said, no, you have it already. And nothing can impact it. And it's always been there. And so it was a huge relief for me. You know what I mean? Like, the search was over. But then I had to make sense of, well, what are they talking about? You know, what does that mean? My well-being is in me already, or who I really am is inside of me. And we're speaking to something formless that we're connected to. And I had to settle down to hear that kind of stuff. And that took me a while, because my mind was pretty fast.
Raise my hand to that.
I was a Zoomer. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride for me. And again, I think when I stopped trying to work on myself and I stopped looking, and I just settled into, okay, this is just where I'm at. I just got neutral about where I was at. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad. It's just, this is it. And that's when things started to open up for me. And I can't explain that, but I think we spend a lot of time, you know, trying to make sense of who we are and why are we here and what's the point, and I need to make more money, or I need to have better relationships, or I need to be a super coach, or I need to, we get on that track, and it's good to do these wonderful things, but we lose sight of ourselves.
Oh, yes. Right.
That's what happens.
That's what happens.
We get lost in that.
I see a wonderful paradox in that we do those things to try and find ourselves, right? But then in that process of trying to find ourselves, we get lost in the direction we're looking. And I love your story, and I so resonated with it, because I've done that my whole life too. And I think it came from that place of not feeling settled within me. And so, well, obviously I need to do something about this feeling that I didn't really understand. And I felt like going in a big circle, and then finally coming back and looking in the mirror and going, oh, because I too stumbled across Michael on a program and was like, oh, and it wasn't, I don't even remember what he said, but I remember the feeling was very unique. I was like, oh, this is new. And this is like, what, this feels like home. And I resonate with your story. You in your story, you shared how you started from Western religion. I
Yes.
started from Eastern religion because in Thailand we had to become men become monks, and we were
Yes.
ordained for the
Yes.
honor of our families. And I was chanting, and I had no idea what I was chanting, and I was
Yes.
meditating, and I had no idea what I was meditating. And I remember one day after, like, I think like my second year into hanging out with Michael, I was reading like a Taoist book, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I get this now. Like, oh, okay,
Yes.
here we go.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I was so excited. Like, Michael, you never believe it. I learned how to read. Like, you don't get it. I understand the missing link now. And true to what you were saying,
Yes.
it
Yes.
came from not looking. It
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
from just really settling.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part of, it's almost like God's greatest trick, magic trick,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting, like, if you listen to Sydney Banks, who pretty much presents the principles
Mm,
in a way that resonates for people, it's more
mhm,
accessible. But he would say, rabbis would want to come listen to him, gurus from other countries, monks, whatever, they would listen to him. And he would say, this is at the core of every culture and every religion on the planet.
mm,
This is what, Christ pointed to this, Buddha pointed to this, Muhammad pointed to this. And unfortunately, and we get caught up in the form of it.
mm,
The true essence of religion can get totally lost in the
mhm.
form.
Right.
I'll never forget, I was in Rome, and I was with this gentleman who was very religious. Well, not like he was practicing his religion. He's Greek Orthodox, and he wanted to see all the churches, and we went to St. Peter's, and I'm like, I was so done with the whole stuff, all that. And I looked at him, I said, if Jesus were here today, he would look around and say, this is not what I was talking about. This, you guys have missed the message.
Mm,
All the money and all the form is not what I was pointing you folks to. It's not that, it's inside you.
mm,
And the guy I was with at the time, he said, well, people were doing this to honor him. And I said, well, that's not what he wanted. He didn't want to be honored by these beautiful churches and things like that. If you were going to honor him, if you would feed the poor and listen
mm.
to people who had mental disorders, or your service to your community, that's what he was pointing people to be connected to all human beings. And I could reappreciate my religion that I was raised in. Like, oh, there is something at the core of Catholicism.
Mm.
So I was grateful to realize that. I really was. And there are people who are connected to the essence versus the form in all the different religions.
Right.
So yeah.
I'd love for you to speak more to the essence of our true nature, because across the board in kind of years of doing this and listening to mentors like you, the common feelings that seem to come up is love, unconditionalness, love, almost giving, like there's a givingness to it. I can't quite describe it. The only way I know how to describe it is when your cup is full, you can't help but want to give. And kind of there's a healing nature to it as well. Like what do you make of that? Why those things?
Well, here's what happens. It's not a doing.
Mm.
It's an understanding. So because I was a doer, I was a social
Me
advocate.
too.
I was, yeah, and real civil rights, women's rights, everybody's rights, very much advocating. And the piece that I didn't understand was that all human beings have this limitless capacity within them, have this spiritual soul within them. And I use that word because I want people to really get that we are not the form that we're in. I'm Cathy, I'm physically Cathy, but during a day, I used to be all these different Cathys. So, I'd wake up in the morning, okay, I'm a mom because I was a mother. So all right, now I'm in my mom role. I have to get my kid up, feed him breakfast, give him his lunch, go to school. So I was in my mom role. Then I would go to work. Now I'm a worker mode. I'm a worker, I'm a mentor, I'm a supervisor, I'm a manager, and then I'm married. So now I'm in the wife role. And so the whole day I'm like adjusting in my thinking without realizing it, of being different things in different situations. Now that takes up a lot of personal thinking. Every time we go into what we think we are, that creates, you have to be in a lot of thought about that. So to be in mom thinking, think of the tallest building in the entire world. That's how much thinking I'm in being a mom, worrying, being hypervigilant, all the things you have to do. And that was just being a mom. I mean, we won't even talk about all the other, I became a wife, I became a supervisor, so all day long, I'm walking around in all this thought, personal thought of who I am. And then over time, I'm starting to feel mentally drained, trying to live up and continue in all that thinking to kind of be all things to all these different people. But I thought that's what I was supposed to be, that's what it was. And then when I got hit with the principles, they said, well, no, none of that's required. Like for me to be a parent or a mom, I don't need to be walking around in this whole idea of what it takes to be a mom and be in a role of being a mom. And it took Roger Mills to point that out to me, because he looked at me and said, worrying is not required to be a parent. I said, well, yes, it does. Because my son, he was born with pneumonia and he was in and out of the ER a lot with all these issues. I said, no, that's part of the job description. Worrying is part of being a good mom. And he challenged me on that. And I had to realize that. I had to wake up to me walking around carrying my son in all this thinking. Somehow in my mind, that was being a good mom. It was going to protect him. It was going to ensure that everything's going to work out for him, when that was just kind of a crazy logic to have. So when I woke up to that, all that stuff just came off of me. And now with my son, we're human to human. So all that meant is I'm just present with him now. I have no ideas of being a mom when I'm with him. I'm just, he's a human being, I'm a human being. Now I did, protect him, and I fed him, I put a roof over his head. I mean, we do those things as parents, but we want to see them as separate souls that I have no say over. I mean, I'm there to engage his wisdom, to connect to his wisdom. That's a whole different way of being. So as you live your life, realizing that about just one aspect of your life, and all those roles start to come off of you, what do you think's left?
Right. Just
what's left?
Right. What's left?
What's left is you're just in the moment. And you're just, that's who you are. You're just, your mind is free and clear. And when we slip into that, that's always in us. When we slip into that, then that's the whole point of being here on the planet. We're coming home. I love what you said. That's home. Home is inside me. But I never knew that. And if people don't know that, then they do all kinds of crazy things to try to get back to that home feeling.
Right. I spent 20 years as a professional Taekwondo athlete looking for home and gold medals. And they'd be so fleeting, because you'd get the gold, you'd get whatever medal, you'd stand on the podium for about 10 seconds, and then you'd step off, and like the feeling would be gone, like, okay, now I have to do it again. And I would be kind of addicted to winning,
It's like Christmas, waiting for Christmas.
Right.
And you know what, there's nothing wrong with doing those things. It's just that we get caught up in the illusionary idea that that's what's giving me my self-worth. That's, I would look at people and say, your presence, you just being here on the planet in this presence is enough. Is enough. You don't have to be doing anything. If your mind is free and clear and you're just here on the planet and you have an understanding of where that comes from, how that comes about, and you have that set of eyes on yourself and others, that has way more impact on the consciousness of everybody around us than anything we could do.
That's amazing. I think I just got, because my mentor Michael, he talks a lot about being present to presence, and I think I just understood it when you said it. Like, you're really being present to your own presence that's within you, because I thought it was like kind of this something in the sky presence. Like, no, he's pointing into the inside.
No. It's so ordinary.
It is
so like undramatic, so like, and I know I don't know which culture says, 1 minute you're chopping wood and then you find God and then you're still chopping wood.
I think
like,
it's the Eastern. It's like
yes,
before enlightenment, chop wood. After enlightenment, chop wood.
Yeah. See, that's it. Yeah. And it's funny because people, when they start learning the principles, people started to think it was special that I have to be a certain way, or, and when I first came into this, Michael and I, we connected on this together, both of us. A lot of the folks that we were learning this from were very calm and very kind of slow. And in my time, I would look at those folks as boring.
Right.
Like, these people are really, like Dickin and Sandy and George. Oh, these are boring people. And then as I realized the principles, and I'm just teaching inmates in jail here locally, and I'm just doing my thing. And then Sydney Banks found out about my work, and he flipped. He wanted to know what I was doing, and that's all he could talk about. He eventually visited the jail here. He spoke directly to the inmates, but so I'm getting a lot of recognition from him, which was kind of a two-edged sword, because now everybody wanted to, hear me and talk to me and all of this, but I didn't look like the rest of them.
You didn't
act
speak
like
at the same speed, either.
So when Michael started learning this through the 𝗖𝘀𝗵𝘆 group, and they assigned him to all these different teachers to have sessions with them, and he would complain about that to me. You guys are so slow, I can't hang. And, he would sort of complain, and they would say, well, wait till you meet Cathy. And we finally met. We did a phone session, and we started talking to each other. He said, you're normal. You're a normal person.
Normal speed.
You're normal. And we had a good laugh. And that session, I did no mentoring. We just hung out and had a good time. But see, this is not a way of being. So I can still be Cathy with whatever energy I have, but it's my understanding. So my presence doesn't look the same as yours or somebody else's presence. See, being in the moment as an athlete, being in the moment is extremely dynamic. As an athlete, you know that. You're not just going, oh.
Well, somebody kicks you in the face.
Yeah. You're in the zone.
You're right.
You were in it, but it's very dynamic. See, people don't understand at the core of us, when we go into this core, that's who we really are. And see, athletes know about this. But what happens is athletes, they connect to it in their sport, and then they go into their life, and it's like,
they left it on the field.
Exactly.
Right.
So this is something that's in us from day one.
I'd love for you to talk to what have you seen become available in people and through people the more in touch they are with this presence? Because I know you've done a lot of work in prisons, and and that's why I love listening to your stories. I'm like, Cathy's seen the worst of the worst of that humanity has to offer. But to me, that was like, when I think about it, like, you're so special to me, because for you to be able to see the best of humanity in the worst, I think That's a gift. I'd love for you to share more about that.
Well, see, that's the first thing is we need to see it for ourselves. Okay. Meaning, and I love how you describe it is you know, we search everywhere and we do things trying to come home.
Right.
And then finally the penny drops. So you finally, all of a sudden you got hit with it. You went, oh, that's what you got hit with it. Okay. So the first thing is I have to have certainty that this is within me. Absolutely 100% first thing you have to see. Because if you don't see it for yourself, regardless of how bad you think you've been in your life or all all the past, if you can't have that certainty that you have this God-given wisdom within you, whether you were connected to or not, if you don't understand that, then you will not be able to see it in others. So for me, it took me waking up to that I had them. And Roger Mills, when he said, no, it's in you, I looked at him, I said, well, I guess the joke's been on me because I've been looking all out here and you're telling me it's been in me the whole time. And I've spent all this money trying to find it, getting a degree and I have a feeling that's all going out the window. And they go, yeah. And they all have PhDs too. And they said, yeah, no, this is something that you've had all along. So I got my own certainty. Then when you start to go out into the world, well, if it's true for me, it has to be true for them. So it's the set of eyes you have. So when I go in to work with the high secure unit in the main jail, and they're all in red shirts, that means they've done some really bad things. They've killed other people, severe sexual, rape, bad stuff.
Like they should be in there, right?
Oh yeah. That most of them should be in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And should be in a very strict environment. Okay. Well, they asked me to go into that environment because there was so much fighting. There was so much fighting and it was a risk to the correctional officers. So they said, because they saw the results I was getting in the less secure area of the jail. And I said, sure. Now, I didn't go in there to stop the fighting. I just wanted to point them to what we've been talking about. I wanted them to realize, regardless of what they've done, that core inside of them is still there. And the reason why they've been doing what they've been doing is because of where their personal thinking goes. And that it comes via these principles. And they just started to learn about that. And over time, what do you think started happening?
I imagine they probably calmed down a bit, right?
They calmed down a bit. And even the correctional officers were not happy with me being in there because they had to be super nervous that something could happen to me. So it was a really dicey situation. But because I had the certainty, and these guys, you know what they said to me at one point? Cathy, you're different. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, when you look at us, they pick up on people. Their radar systems really, they can pick out BS when they see it. They saw that I was coming in like this. It wasn't like I'm here to fix you, help you. And I even told them, I said, hey, I'm not here to tell you how to live. They've been in the gang life, maybe third generation. I mean, it's a whole culture for them. I said, no, I just want you to understand the blueprint of where your experience comes from. I just want to share that with you. And they felt my neutrality, but they felt that I didn't judge them. But I did say a few times, I don't agree with what you've done, but I understand given where your level of understanding was, it made sense for you to do that. Given your culture, given your whatever. So what started to happen was violence started to leave these guys, this violent state of mind. And even they didn't understand it. Even they're like, whoa, what's, this is weird. But they kept saying, we've never heard this before. Nobody has ever looked at them as a whole human being that still has this wisdom. So all of a sudden they're having me and other people look at them in a different way. not being naive, not being like, oh, let's open all the jails and let them all out. No, just helping them get reconnected to who they really are. And that's when all these amazing things started to happen that even I couldn't anticipate. That changes over time. Some of these guys change radically. They even look different physically. In San Quentin, when we worked with a group of guys, when we first started, they all look kind of gray. You know, like when you've been if you've done 10 years in San Quentin, you sort of, that life force, that energy, it just sort of isn't there. Can you imagine a state of mind doing time, 10 years in a horrible old prison?
Yeah.
So when they were with us over time, it's like they started to get color. I mean, their faces changed. I wish we had filmed it. You could absolutely see the change physically because their minds started to lighten up, their understanding started to come up, and they started to reconnect, and they literally physically changed. It's just amazing. And I've worked with people with severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, where over time, total different manifestation. They still have this brain disorder of schizophrenia, but because their minds have calmed down, the bizarre manifestations came way down. And I wish we had filmed that one because the change was just night and day, like you wouldn't believe it. So yeah, the power of understanding that you still have this core well-being and you've never lost it is very powerful when people wake up to it. But again, I have to have my own certainty that it's in me, and then they feel my certainty that it's still in them. They feel it.
I love that. And what I heard in what you say is the word understanding really struck chord, meaning it's not like, you know, when we say, where do I find my true nature? It's not, it really is settling and really spending time understanding how the blueprint works. And it's almost like kind of like a magic lamp where just, you don't know what's going to come out of it, but you know it's going to be good.
That's right.
You don't know where it's going to take you,
it's
going to guide you, but
that's right.
Yeah.
Sydney Banks said, I was lucky. I got to hang out with him with smaller groups. And one day he says, we're all sitting in enlightenment, but we just don't know it. And I thought, really? I'm actually sitting in enlightenment? I got so excited. I said, even if I don't know it, the fact that I'm sitting in it got me all excited. You know what I mean? Meaning it's that simple. It's that accessible. It's like there. It's there. It's like right with you and me right now. And potentially every time I do work with groups of people, I tell the group straight out, potentially one of you or a few of you could have a life-changing insight or become enlightened like spontaneously at any given moment. And that's what Sydney Banks was pointing us to, is this is within you. He says, no, it's not me, it's you. He was always pointing us back to ourselves. And then in the next breath, he would pull me aside, and he loved the work I was doing. And he'd look at me and go, now, Cathy, you know, you don't know. I go, no, I don't know anything.
You don't know.
But he said, keep doing what you're doing with what little you know, or with what little you've discovered for yourself. That will go a long way, because he saw people get kind of cocky about this and get into their ego about this, thinking that they know. None of us can never know. Potentially we can know everything, but in the meantime, we can only know what we know. And he was very adamant about that, because he saw people get a little carried away with this. Kind of like, well, I know this and I've had my insight, and so I'm the expert. No, none of us are the expert. And all I can do is just be as connected within myself at any given moment.
It's such a twist. I think what you're also pointing to is the approach to understanding, because I think that we have a lot of thinking about the way we understand things. Like, and I think, because similar to you, I've tried like everything under the book. I mean, everything like personal development and new age, but all those things had an element of, okay, if I can just understand this, understand every part of it, this should work. And of course, it never always did. You know what I mean? And to make that distinction with this is this understanding doesn't mean you're going to figure it out. Like, in fact, that will take you away from it, right? What you're pointing to is it. I don't think I even have I just realized I don't have language for it. But to me, it looks like just understanding where it is and completely letting go to not knowing what it is. I remember
that's a great way of describing it.
Right. This is the best I could do given our like English language. I remember I was going to 3P school, and it was 𝗖𝘀𝗵𝘆 and Ken, and I was talking to Elsie. I was like, Elsie, so I get all these insights and I don't know what they mean, or I can't articulate them. And Elsie's like, you don't have to do any of that. You just let mind mentor you. And I sat with that for like 4 months. I was like, let mind, like, what do you mean let mind mentor me? I'm supposed, and then I saw it. I was like, oh, it's just layers and layers of understanding. And I think it's so helpful for you to say that, because like, oh wait, I don't need to get this.
Yeah, there's nothing to get. I remember when I first started, I was learning from different people, Roger Mills and Sydney Banks and Mark Howard, different people. And so I'd be sitting there and everybody's having insights and everybody's in a good feeling. And I'm sitting there like, well, when is it going to happen to me?
Yeah, like my turn. Yeah.
Yeah. And my hand was always up. Well, what about this? And what about that? And finally I remember I was sitting in a somewhere where Roger was, he was teaching us and stuff. And I was getting ready to raise my hand again, and they were so patient with me. And all of a sudden I heard somebody say, shut up. And I thought, who said that? And it was this voice inside me that said, shut up. Who said that? Oh, that was me. And I sort of went, okay. It was weird that my wisdom or whatever you said, Cathy, just shut up. Just sit and listen. And okay, it was really funny. I mean, it was like a defining moment for me. And I thought, okay. I stopped, questioning. I just said, okay, chill pill, just shut up. And again, it was like a few weeks later, I was sitting, and I'm sure people have heard me say this before. I was sitting waiting for the light to change in my car. And all of a sudden I just slipped into this amazing feeling, which means all that happened is my mind just cleared up. And I just slipped into whatever, being present. And I thought, oh, this is what they're talking about. And I was not doing anything. I was just sitting in my car. And I went, oh, okay. So I don't have to do anything. This kicked in, just me sitting in my car. And again, this is the mystery piece. When I teach the principles to one person, 100 people, I just finished helping somebody teach this to car salesmen, right?
Yeah. Teaching
the principles to car salesmen. Like, how is that going to work, right? And the guy I'm mentoring, he said, well, like there was this one guy, he was totally not into it, and he was this and that. And my first thought is, I bet he's the one that's going to get impacted the most. And sure enough, when we checked in with him the next day, anything occurred the night before, anything new, and he started sharing stuff. And I thought, again, the mystery piece. He saw himself not listening to his wife. He saw himself dominating people. He just saw his whole ego.
Right.
And he copped to it. He said, man, I'm starting to see how I am with my wife and this and that. And I almost fell out of my chair. So again, I used to ask Roger, now what is it that happens that happens to people? He said, if I knew that, I would be a very wealthy man. It's a
I
mystery.
yeah,
It's a
I,
mystery.
it is. I've been reading Dr. 𝗔𝗯𝘂𝘁𝗁sky's Modelo book about Dr. Roger
Yes.
Mill's story in
Yes.
Modelo. He is the most patient human on the planet of the earth. Like I'm reading like because I think you read like the stuff he had to deal with day in and day out. Like he didn't just walk in and it was all rosy. Like it looked
Oh,
like he
no,
had to deal with a lot of stuff. People like rejecting and saying no. I'm like, God bless that man. You know.
well, see, that's why I feel so lucky. He was my main mentor.
Mm.
Brilliant trainers, brilliant. Boy, was I lucky to be, be around to learn from him. Miss Beverly Hayes, she's the other one.
Mom,
Those two
yeah,
people. Have
yeah.
you met Miss Beverly? She's
Yeah,
been on.
I have, and she's one of my favorite
She,
like 3P Marvel characters. I'm gonna that's
she's amazing. Now, can you imagine? I got to go with her into the jails.
wow.
That's so between learning from Roger and being with her. I mean, that's an amazing story. Because when I first heard her speak, and I had been impacted by Joe Bailey, and then I heard her speak, I ran up to her and I said, I don't know what it's going to be, but you and I are going to work together. And she's like, okay, honey, kind of like she's backing away because I was like really intense. And I got funded to do a program in the jail, and I wrote her into the program. And then once I got the money, I had to call her thinking, oh my God, if she doesn't want to do it, I'm screwed. And I called her up and I said, we got this funding to teach women the principles in jail. And we kind of wrote you in as one of the trainers. Would you be interested? And I'm holding my breath. Me and my colleague were holding our breath because I'd never taught anything before. I had never done this before. So all of a sudden there was nothing. There was no response. And then next thing I'm hearing, there's this crying and sobbing. She's crying, and I'm like, Beverly, are you okay? And she said, how did you know this was my dream? And she's just crying with joy and happiness. I'm like, okay, good. She's happy about it. And I said, well, she said, of course I want to do this. And she lived an hour and a half away. So the
Wow.
logistics were going to be. And I said, well, we wrote you in. This is how much we can pay you. She says, well, my fee is a little higher. I said, no problem. We'll make the adjustment. And so that's how I started to learn how to teach the principles with her.
Right.
And there's no describing it.
Oh, there's so many. I've seen that happen. I was exploring with a colleague about exactly what you talked about, how like there's so much less to do, and see how kind of mind and wisdom works on you for somebody else's favor. And that was new to me and my colleague. We looked at it, we're like, holy shit. I've been so transformed and changed for this to kind of fit in with this other person's journey. And we were just so amazed at how epic mine was. And as we're sharing, because I know that you also work with a lot of professionals in corporate and blue chip, and I wonder what you see as being true for both people in prison and people in that world. Like what are the commonalities that you've seen as a trainer and facilitator?
Well, to be honest with you, when I first, I was working in government and in the jails and more nonprofits, that kind of thing. And one day I thought, I wonder how this plays out in the corporate world. I thought, because I heard George and Linda Pransky were starting to take this into this big defense company. And so we had a big conference in San Jose around the principals, and they were in town, and their contact in this big company, he was in town. He was the head of human resources. And Linda Pransky kept saying to me, go talk to Dick. You need to talk to Dick. I'm like, okay, but I was so busy putting on the conference, who had time for anything? But he was leaving. She said, listen, he's getting ready to leave. He's going to drive to the airport. So I ran out to the parking lot at where the conference was. And hey, Dick, and he turns around, he said, hey, what's up? He said, yeah, we were supposed to have a beer together. It never happened. I said, I'm sorry, I'm putting on a conference and I'm so sorry. I said, well, I'd love to observe how you guys do this in the corporate world. He said, yes, please come. He said, yeah. He said, so you'd be okay if I just kind of hung out and watched how you guys did? He said, feel free. So George was rolling out a brand new program in this big defense company for, I think, the top tier managers. And so I asked George and Lynn, I said, is it okay? Because Dick said it was okay. And George's cute. He goes, well, he's my boss. So if he says it's okay, plus we were friends already.
Yeah.
So anyway, to make a long story short, so I go out there to be a fly on the wall. Like, this is new. This is going to be different. You know, I have no background in doing this with folks like this. So George is rolling it out, and he's having the big meeting to talk about how they're going to approach it. And then he says, we're going to break people into small groups. We'll have big group sessions and then small group sessions. And each person's going to take a group. And Cathy, you're going to get one too. I said, no group. No, I'm
the fly on the wall. Yeah.
No, you're getting a group. And like, how do you say no to George? Right. So it finally happens. They split us up into groups where they're supposed to reflect on some sentence that George made up or something. So I go into this room with 8 guys. They're all engineers, a couple of financial guys. And I'm getting ready to start something like, okay, we need to reflect on this. Well, they totally ignored me. They were there to talk business. They were there to catch up. Hey man, what's that? Yeah. Talk about baseball. I mean, and I'm sitting there like, oh, I told them not to give me a group.
Yeah.
This is really bad. They don't even care I'm there. I mean, it was bad. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden it hit me because I was working in juvenile hall with boys, boys who are in the juvenile justice system. And I thought, well, wait a minute. When the boys are doing this, you know how to handle the boys in juvenile hall. So there's no difference here. They're not paying attention. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So all of a sudden I stood up and I clapped my hand really loud. And they stopped. They looked at me. I go,
what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah. And I go, okay, we're not here for that. We're not here for this. We're here to get to know each other, reflect on what George asked us to talk about. So what we're going to do, and I said, each one of you is going to introduce I went into this mode with them. And they looked at me and they complied, you know, all right, they introduced themselves, you know, family, anything you want to share. By the 4th guy, they started to talk over each other again. No, crosstalk. You know, I just went into this mode, got through the whole thing. By the time we got through everybody, it's time to go back to the large group. And they all walked out of the room and I'm like, oh man, that was a nightmare. I was like, I want to go home now. I always say to myself, I want my mommy.
Yeah, I've been there.
Well,
yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, Dick, the head guy, and Lynn 𝗔𝗯ance𝘂𝘁𝘁, they were outside the door listening in the whole time. And I didn't know it. They were out there. And when I came outside and I saw them, I must have turned beet red. And Dick 𝗔𝗯ance𝘂𝘁𝘁, he looks at me, goes, you are hired. I go, hired for what?
What? Yeah.
I need people like you. I mean, I love the 𝗔𝗯ance𝘂𝘁𝘁 group, but they're a little too, no, I need people like you. These guys need to be hit over the head sometimes to just stop their whatever they're doing and just pay attention. So he gave me this huge honorarium check. He paid for all my expenses. And then I started doing this work for 5 years. That's how I got into the corporate world. So the point I'm making is there was no difference between kids and boys in juvenile hall and this group of guys and these super smart engineers, no difference.
Wow.
And we started to share. George showed a video of the inmates learning this. The inmates knew I was working with these guys on the East Coast.
Yeah.
They would say things like, well, Cathy, how did they do compare to us learning this stuff? And then the engineers asked the same thing. Who's harder to teach, us or them? And I look at the guys, the engineers, I go, well, what do you think? We're probably harder, aren't we? I go, yeah, you guys are harder. Because they know they've messed up. Now,
That's a good point.
You guys are successful and your life is okay. But ultimately, they do want better relationships with their family. They do see where things aren't going the way they'd like on the job. And so over time, they realize, yeah, there's no difference. So I can be in any environment where the people are diagnosed with schizophrenia, people in a lockdown, gang unit, professional engineers, professional salespeople, all those kinds of different folks, because we all universally operate the same way, and we are all universally connected to universal intelligence. That's all I need to know.
Beautiful.
So it all works out.
It does. Thank you for sharing that. I've seen a lot in that. It's taken a lot of, it's kind of taken the wind out a lot of my insecurities too. It's like, oh yeah, like it is all the same.
I thought it was going to be different in the corporate world, and that I don't know, like that's going to be a new thing for me, when actually there was no difference. And I'm so glad I realized, had the insight about the kids in juvenile hall. It just hit me while I was sitting there feeling like, oh, I failed. And when I realized what I realized, I just went into that, and that's what impacted. I was just being myself.
So I know we're coming up on time. So last question.
Sure.
For people who are looking in this direction of looking for their true nature, or looking to be in their true nature, what gift would you give them if people were listening and they were kind of like trying to figure out their true nature? What would you give them as a last parting gift?
Well, you know what I see a lot in all different kinds of people, how we're so hard on ourselves, whether we know the principles or don't know the principles. I don't care. If people have so much thinking about, how am I doing? Am I good enough? Should I be doing more? I know I should do more, but I somehow don't want to, or I can't. We have all this thinking that we hold against ourselves. And I think that's probably the number one issue on the planet, because the more we hold against ourselves and the heavier that becomes, it keeps us from being in that natural connection with ourselves and other people. So what I invite people to do is two things: to realize that your presence on the planet is enough. You know, if your mind is free and clear and you're working at McDonald's, that right there is, your spirit is impacting whoever you become in contact with. So if I end up working at McDonald's and I slip into that presence and I'm just in that place, the good feeling will come from me, and that will impact anybody. Okay, so that's the first thing. You are enough. And to have compassion for yourself, to accept that you're doing the best you can, accept your humanity. See, and instead of trying to work on yourself and work on yourself and work on yourself, accept that you're doing the best you can and take that weight. See, as soon as we get connected to our humanity, and I'm not saying we don't just railroad people or we're terrible to people and say, oh, well, no, we take responsibility, but then we don't carry it forever. And that's what I saw with the inmates. Yeah, they messed up. And when they finally could take just responsibility versus the heavy weight of guilt, because the heavy weight of guilt keeps them doing the same thing. The heavy weight of guilt keeps us looking outside and running the treadmill and spinning our wheels. If we could just slip into our own humanity and acceptance of that, and know that we are enough, what we have inside of us is enough. That's what I would leave people with.
I love that. And I'm so happy we have that recorded, and that this gets to go out to the world, and I get to send this to everybody and everybody. And, you know, I just want to thank you so much, Cathy, for your light, your stories, and your presence. And my life's changed. There's so much I heard today that is confirmed and reconfirmed and like realigned and within, and I can feel it. I can't articulate it, but I can feel it. And
well, I love your spirit too. You have that lightness, and that's we were meant to be light beings. We were designed to be that way, and we've just gotten really, really, really serious and heavy about ourselves and the world, And if we're in that lightness, that's what's going to help whatever is going on. That's what's going to make a difference. I love
that. Lightness brings light to everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quotable. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop recording. This has been such a gift. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right.